What if the story you were told was carefully edited? What if the timeline didn't just shift but collapsed under its own contradictions? Because right now, the internet is circling around one unsettling question. Did Erika Kirk lie about her past? Or was her past deliberately erased for a reason? It started quietly. A few resurfaced photos. Old tweets that didn't match public statements. Names that were never supposed to be mentioned, again Cabot Phillips, Tyler, and a timeline that refuses to stay buried. Then Candace Owens stepped in, and suddenly, what looked like gossip turned into a full-blown digital investigation. People aren't just asking who Erika dated before Charlie. They're asking why those relationships were rewritten, who benefited, and why the silence since the expose has been so loud. Tonight, we're breaking down exactly what Candace Owens revealed. How Erika's previous partners re-entered the conversation. And why online investigators believe this story goes far deeper than anyone expected. Before we get into it, make sure you like this video. Share it, subscribe to the channel, and comment below. Tell us what you think is really going on and where you're watching from. Your insights matter because this case is still unfolding. To understand why this story has exploded the way it has, we need to step back and look at who is involved and why this narrative matters so much right now. At the center of this controversy is Erika Kirk, a woman who, for years, has presented herself as a private figure who stepped into the public eye through circumstance, not ambition. Her relationship with Charlie Kirk placed her under intense scrutiny. But her public image remained tightly controlled, carefully framed, consistent, and largely unquestioned. Then there's Candace Owens. Candace isn't just another commentator reacting online. She's someone known for challenging official narratives, revisiting uncomfortable details, and asking questions others avoid. But because she has a history of forcing conversations into the open. And that's exactly what happened here. This story resurfaced not because of a single leak or headline, but because multiple timelines began colliding at once. Old relationships that were supposedly non-existent suddenly had digital footprints. Individuals who were never mentioned in Erika's public story. Cabot Phillips and Tyler started appearing in archived posts, resurfaced images, and third-party accounts. What made this moment different was timing. The internet had already been questioning inconsistencies. But once Candace Owens publicly addressed Erika's past and highlighted names that had seemingly been scrubbed from the narrative, the scrutiny intensified overnight. Reddit threads multiplied. TikTok breakdowns went viral. And people began asking whether this was just about past relationships or about image control, reputation management, and deliberate omission. This wasn't about moral judgment. It was about truth versus narrative. So before we examine what Candace revealed, we first need to understand the official version of events, the story Erika herself told, and why so many people accepted it without question. For years, Erika Kirk's public story was remarkably clean. According to her own statements in interviews and public appearances, she had no serious romantic relationships for several years before meeting Charlie Kirk. The narrative was simple and polished. She portrayed herself as someone focused on work, faith, and personal growth, not dating or entanglements. When asked about her past, the answer was always consistent. There was nothing significant to tell. This version of events became the foundation of her public image. In multiple appearances, Erika suggested that her connection with Charlie was unexpected, organic, and free from complicated history. Their meeting was framed as chance. Their relationship as straightforward. And her past as largely uneventful. For a long time, that story went unchallenged. There were no viral counterclaims, no mainstream pushback, and no visible reason for the public to doubt what they were being told. In fact, anyone who tried to question the narrative early on was often dismissed as reaching or speculating without cause. But true crime investigations don't usually begin with a scandal. They begin with small inconsistencies. A date that doesn't quite line up. A photo that shouldn't exist. A name that keeps appearing where it supposedly doesn't belong. And that's exactly what started happening here. As people began revisiting old interviews and comparing them to archived social media posts, a gap emerged between what was said and what could still be found online. Erika's claim of having no meaningful relationships during that period didn't immediately collapse, but it started to bend. And then came the moment that changed everything. Because once Candace Owens publicly questioned this version of events, the focus shifted from belief to verification. Suddenly, people weren't asking whether Erika was telling the truth, they were asking what the evidence actually showed. Candace Owens didn't enter this conversation quietly. She didn't frame her involvement as gossip or rumor. Instead, she approached it the way she often does, by challenging the narrative itself. Not with conclusions, but with questions that were difficult to ignore. Rather than accusing Erika Kirk directly, Candace focused on verifiable contradictions. She pointed to timelines. She referenced names that had never appeared in Erika's public story. And she asked why certain relationships, if they truly existed, were completely absent from the version of events the public had been given. That alone was enough to shift the tone. Because once a high-profile commentator questions a narrative, it signals to audiences that there may be more beneath the surface. And in this case, Candace specifically highlighted previous partners that online investigators were already beginning to discuss, most notably Cabot Phillips and Tyler. What made Candace's intervention so impactful wasn't just what she said, it was what happened after. Within hours, archived posts began circulating. Old photos were resurfaced. Tweets that had gone unnoticed for years were suddenly being re-examined. And people realized that these names weren't random. They were tied to real individuals, real timelines, and real proximity to Erika's life during the period she claimed to be unattached. Candace didn't claim wrongdoing. She didn't allege conspiracy. She simply questioned why these relationships had been erased. And that question opened the floodgates. Once the internet smelled a discrepancy, it did what it does best, dig. Timelines were mapped, screenshots were preserved, and people began noticing something unsettling. The deeper they looked, the harder it became to reconcile Erika's public statements with the digital record. At that point, this was no longer just Candace Owens versus Erika Kirk. It had become a crowdsourced investigation. Which brings us to the two names that now sit at the center of this story, the ex-partners, whose existence may change everything. Cabot Phillips, Tyler. Once those names entered the conversation, the story took a very different turn. Because Cabot Phillips and Tyler weren't obscure figures pulled from nowhere. They were individuals with documented connections, visible timelines, and digital footprints that appeared to overlap directly with the period Erika claimed she was not dating anyone at all. Let's start with Cabot Phillips. Archived posts and resurfaced images suggested that Erika and Cabot were not casual acquaintances. Online investigators pointed to photos, captions, and third-party interactions that implied a close personal relationship during the very years Erika later described as a period of singleness. Some of these posts were eventually deleted, but not before screenshots circulated across forums and social platforms. What raised eyebrows wasn't just the relationship itself, it was the absence of it from Erika's public narrative. There was no acknowledgement, no clarification, no explanation for why someone who appeared so prominently in her past was later treated as if he never existed. Then there's Tyler. Tyler's name surfaced through a different trail connections through events, overlapping social circles, and images placing him around Erika during key moments in her timeline. Online sleuths began aligning dates, locations, and public appearances, noting that Tyler's proximity to Erika appeared to contradict her claims of having no romantic involvement during that period. Again, nothing here was presented as definitive proof of wrongdoing, but the patterns were hard to ignore, to overlapping timelines, and one public story that left them both out entirely. That's where suspicion deepened. People began asking whether these relationships were intentionally omitted or whether Erika believed they wouldn't resurface. Some questioned if redefining the timeline was a way to simplify her story. Others wondered if the erasure served a larger purpose tied to reputation, image, or public perception. And once those questions were asked, the internet did what it always does next. It went looking for receipts, screenshots, archived interviews, resurfaced photos, old tweets that hadn't aged the way they were supposed to. Because if the narrative was rewritten, the digital trail might still remember what was erased. This is where the story becomes impossible to ignore. Online investigators began digging through archived social media, old posts, and screenshots, looking for anything that could confirm or contradict Erika Kirk's official narrative. And what they found wasn't just small inconsistencies, it was a pattern of overlapping timelines, deleted content, and resurfaced interactions pointing to her previous relationships with Cabot Phillips and Tyler. Resurfaced photos showed Erika and Cabot together at social events that occurred during the period she claimed to be single. In some images to share, more than the frame, fueling speculation that the relationship was significant. Archived tweets and captions referenced dinners, outings, and shared experiences with Tyler, contradicting the timeline Erika publicly provided. Some tweets had been deleted, but digital sleuths recovered them using web archives. Timeline overlaps became a major focus. While Erika stated she first met Charlie Kirk in 2018, images and posts suggested she had already been in the same spaces as him. Cabot and Tyler months earlier, sometimes all three in the same location. Third-party confirmations added weight. Former acquaintances and event staff recalled seeing Erika with Cabot or Tyler during key moments, and their accounts started circulating on Reddit threads and TikTok compilations. Even small details fueled suspicion. Captions, emojis, and inside jokes that reappeared in online archives. Subtle references to trips, gatherings, or meetings that had no public record. Behavioral shifts in Erika's social media outfits, polished messaging, and suddenly curated posts immediately following key events. The takeaway: even if nothing here proves ill intent, the digital evidence paints a picture that directly challenges the public story. Deleted posts, resurfaced images, and contradictory timelines gave audiences a reason to question what they were being told. And once these receipts began circulating, the internet went into investigative overdrive, analyzing, cross-referencing, and connecting dots faster than any mainstream outlet could. Once the receipts and digital evidence surfaced, the story exploded online, and that's when crowdsourced investigations took over. Reddit threads, TikTok breakdowns, and Twitter sleuths began piecing together timelines, cross-referencing photos, and analyzing every public appearance Erika had made during those years. Reddit detectives mapped out events, revealing overlaps where Erika, Cabot, and Tyler were in the same spaces sometimes months before she claimed to have met Charlie Kirk. TikTok compilations slowed down video clips, showing Erika glancing nervously at her phone or subtly interacting with Cabot or Tyler, fueling speculation that some meetings were more than coincidental. Pattern recognition became a key tool. Observers noted sudden changes in Erika's social media behavior. Posts became more polished. Captions aligned with Charlie Kirk's messaging, and she appeared increasingly camera-ready overnight. Symbolism and small details also drew attention. For example, certain emojis, repeated locations, or inside jokes pointed to private knowledge that contradicted public statements. Online, communities debated whether these were innocent habits or intentional signals. By this point, Erika's previous partners were no longer just names, they were central figures in a tangled timeline. Cabot's social media presence, Tyler's connections to key events, and overlaps with Charlie created a web that ordinary viewers could follow and question. The internet wasn't just speculating. It was actively reconstructing her past. Every resurfaced post became a clue. Every deleted tweet was a mystery. Every image in which Erika appeared with Cabot or Tyler was analyzed, screenshot by screenshot. What started as curiosity quickly escalated into obsession. Viewers weren't just consuming a story, they were participating in an investigation, connecting dots faster than traditional media outlets. And the deeper they dug, the stranger the story became, revealing contradictions. Just when it seemed the story had been mapped out, new twists began emerging, each one adding another layer of confusion and suspicion. First, there were events that directly contradicted Erika's official timeline. Photos surfaced showing Erika, Cabot, and Tyler at the same social gatherings months before she claimed to have met Charlie. In one particular gala, all three were captured in the same frame, Erika just a few feet from both men. If the official story was true, these coincidences shouldn't exist. Then came text leaks and private messages, allegedly exchanged between Erika and Cabot even after her relationship with Charlie became public. These messages suggested ongoing communication that no public narrative accounted for. While nothing here proves wrongdoing, it added fuel to the theory that the past had been carefully curated or perhaps deliberately erased. Online sleuths also began analyzing behavioral patterns and social media changes. Erika's posts became more polished and coordinated around the same time she publicly appeared with Charlie. Certain emojis and captions aligned closely with Tyler's online activity, hinting at connections previously unnoticed. Key appearances that had gone unreported, meetings, charity events, and social outings started surfacing through archived media. Perhaps the most shocking twist involved timing and personal connections. Tyler, who allegedly introduced Erika to Charlie, was present in multiple locations tied to both individuals. Cabot, on the other hand, maintained an almost invisible profile online. But resurfaced evidence suggested he had a closer role in Erika's life than previously admitted. Suddenly, the story wasn't just about Erika's past relationships, it was about hidden connections, timing inconsistencies, and the possibility that the official narrative had been carefully constructed. This is where silence becomes suspicious. Key individuals, including Erika, Cabot, and Tyler, have either stayed quiet or offered vague statements, leaving the audience to connect the dots themselves. One of the most powerful tools in this story isn't a leaked photo or a resurfaced message, it's silence. Erika Kirk, Cabot Phillips, and Tyler have largely avoided addressing the resurfaced evidence directly. Public statements have been minimal, vague, or carefully worded. And in the world of true crime or any controversial online investigation, silence can speak volumes. Why does silence matter here? It fuels speculation. When key players don't respond, the audience begins to fill in the gaps themselves. Every unanswered question becomes a rumor, and every missing explanation becomes proof in the eyes of online investigators. It signals control. Maintaining a curated public image has always been central to Erika's narrative. The sudden resurfacing of Cabot and Tyler challenges that image. And silence may be a strategy to avoid escalating the story further. It amplifies engagement. On social media, every omission is interpreted as deliberate. Audiences are encouraged to debate, theorize, and dig deeper, keeping attention locked on the story. Observers have also noticed sudden changes in Erika's social media behavior following Candace Owens' intervention. Posts became more curated, outfits coordinated, captions aligned with messaging associated with Charlie Kirk. Certain public interactions were minimized or removed entirely, including tagged photos and collaborative appearances. Similarly, Cabot and Tyler's relative absence from public commentary has added to the mystery. Inconsistencies between what they allegedly knew, what they posted in the past, and what they say now have made audiences question, was this erasure accidental or part of a larger strategy? At this point, it's critical to separate fact from speculation. True crime narratives can blur lines. But understanding what is confirmed versus what is inferred helps viewers think critically about the story. What is proven or verifiable? Erika Kirk publicly claimed she had no significant relationships before meeting Charlie Kirk. Candace Owens publicly questioned Erika's timeline and highlighted previous partners. Archived social media posts, photos, and third-party accounts show Erika interacting with Cabot Phillips and Tyler during the time she claimed to be single. Some deleted posts and resurfaced messages suggest ongoing communication with Cabot and Tyler, but they remain unverified for intent or context. What remains alleged or speculative? That Erika intentionally misrepresented her dating history. That Cabot or Tyler had any role beyond what can be documented. That there was a deliberate plan to craft Erika's public image in connection to Charlie Kirk. Interpretations of symbols, behavioral cues, and timing inconsistencies as evidence of coordination or deception. This distinction is important. While the patterns raise questions, none of the evidence conclusively proves wrongdoing. Instead, the audience is left with contradictions and anomalies that are impossible to ignore. As of today, the story is far from resolved. Erika Kirk has largely remained silent on the resurfaced posts, messages, and photos. She hasn't directly addressed Candace Owens' intervention or the renewed scrutiny over her past relationships. Cabot Phillips and Tyler have similarly avoided public statements, leaving much of the discussion to online investigators and commentators. Meanwhile, the internet continues to dissect every detail. Reddit and TikTok communities are comparing timelines, cross-referencing appearances, and analyzing old posts frame by frame. Users are highlighting inconsistencies in social media activity, from deleted images to sudden changes in posting style. Observers continue to question how Erika's public narrative could have been so polished if these previous relationships were as significant as the evidence suggests. The controversy has shifted public perception. Where some once accepted Erika's story at face value, there is now skepticism. Audiences are questioning what was omitted, why it was omitted, and whether there was intent behind the omissions. Take it from private speculation to public debate. Her intervention effectively forced viewers to reconsider everything previously believed about Erika Kirk's history, turning the story into a crowdsourced investigation. At this point, there are more questions than answers. And the people at the center of the controversy, Erika, Cabot and Tyler, remain largely quiet, letting the mystery deepen with each passing day. So where does that leave us? The story of Erika Kirk, Cabot Phillips, Tyler, and the revelations brought to light by Candace Owens isn't neatly wrapped up. Timelines overlap, relationships are complicated, and key figures remain silent. Every new screenshot, resurfaced post, or online discussion adds another layer to a mystery that refuses to settle. Was Erika intentionally rewriting her past? Were Cabot and Tyler more involved than we realize? And what role did image control, timing, and public perception play in shaping the narrative we've been told? The truth is we don't know yet. But one thing is certain, the internet isn't letting go, and this story is still evolving. And that's where you come in. We want to hear from you. Drop your theories, thoughts, and opinions in the comments below. Tell us where you're watching from and what you think is really going on. If you want to stay on top of every update, every leak, and every contradiction as this story unfolds, make sure to like this video, share it, and subscribe. Because this isn't just a story, it's an investigation, uncovering more evidence and asking questions that others are too afraid to touch. This story is still unfolding and the internet isn't done digging.